There's really no proper way to introduce a topic as sensitive and as serious as this one, but I'm going to do my absolute best to anyway. Over the past 3 or 4 years within the sim racing community, there has been a streamer by the name of Jason Jacoby who has amassed sort of a cult following among very young sim racers after building a extremely expensive NASCAR late model cockpit and turning it into a racing simulator setup that he would then stream races from on iRacing against drivers such as Chase Briscoe, Alex Labay, and other up and coming NASCAR drivers. Jacoby's live streams never really achieved the mainstream popularity he was aiming towards, primarily because a lot of people just saw him as really weird and eccentric. He quickly admitted the race car cockpit that he had stuffed inside his man cave was funded primarily with credit cards he had no intention of paying, as well as payday loans. He had a professional website built so he could advertise himself despite never actually being an esports contestant. And he also raced in a custom fire suit featuring his name, signature, and links to all of his different social media accounts, all of which was not necessary at all for what he was doing. His biggest barrier to mainstream success, however, was his very Ned Flanders like persona he tried to project on live streams, in which he was overly kind, courteous, and compassionate, which came across as really weird and unsettling, especially in the world of online stock car racing, in which the environment naturally is quite aggressive and toxic, even. That being said, Jason still managed to amass a following, albeit a small one, of people who enjoyed watching him trip over himself to be as polite and courteous as possible on live streams. Unfortunately, if something seems too good to be true, or in Jason's case, someone seems too polite or too courteous for their own good, where there's smoke, there's fire. We've learned over the past couple of months that Jason Jacoby, the iRacing streaming personality, is very much a virtual stock car equivalent of Onision. We have learned that away from the very calculated persona that Jason has chosen to project through his YouTube streams and his social media accounts, that there is a very large trail of destruction following this man. Jason Jacoby will go down as the most dangerous man to ever be part of the sim racing community. Now, while it's one thing to upload Facebook screenshots or Facebook DMs and weave together a narrative with a voiceover, we're going to go above and beyond for this situation because it absolutely deserves it. McKenzie Gordon, which some of you might know as Jason Jacoby's ex-girlfriend and the mother of his child, has agreed to sit down for an interview to explain basically the depths of insanity she was forced to deal with while serving as the moderator for his live streams, being his girlfriend away from the camera, and eventually having his kid. Kenzie has basically been forced to keep all of this info quiet so Jason could keep up his appearances within the sim racing community and continue to try and make connections in NASCAR to fulfill his own goals. But now that she's thankfully far, far away from him, she is now free to basically talk about whatever she wants and go into detail about some of the things she experienced when dealing with this guy. Alright, so Mackenzie, thank you for taking the time out of your Sunday evening to sit down here and talk about all this stuff, which is incredibly difficult for someone in your position to do because this is going to relive a lot of bad memories. But there are a lot of people with morbid curiosity who really just want to know what happened because this guy was such a eccentric figure in the sim community for so long, and we just have so many questions. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this. And really, you just have the floor. Just introduce yourself because not a lot of people know who you are. They really just know you by your name and that you were Jason Jacoby's girlfriend for a period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously, my name's McKenzie Gordon. I am now currently 20. When Jason and I met, I was actually 14. Um, I just grew up Athens, Georgia. That's where we met. Met working at Domino's. Well, I met him actually in the drive-thru at Domino's when I was 14. Um, and then yeah, so here we are, like 4 years later, and my life is kind of crazy. I went to a school kind of outside of Athens. I've always lived in Athens all my life, but I went to a school called East Jackson High School in Commerce, Georgia. Um, I did. I was in the dance program pretty much all my life. I grew up playing softball, then high school started, and I joined dance, and that really became a passion for me. And then when I turned 16, I got my first job. I worked at Dairy Queen, and then that didn't work out. So I went to Domino's and I stayed there for about 2 years. Within a couple months of working at Domino's, I had asked had gotten asked to move up to a management position. So that was a pretty big accomplishment in my time.
So you were basically just a very much normal Georgia teen living in the suburbs, more or less, with the just very stereotypical interest for a teenage girl: dance, working at minimum wage jobs, just kind of going about your day.
Oh yeah, my life was very, very normal. There was nothing abnormal about my life whatsoever. I was your average, everyday girl. Nice middle class family, nice home, nice cars, great parents. Great family life. My life was so normal, and it was great. Mentally, I was great, and I mean, my life was just perfect.
So you guys say you met when you were 14. I'm not sure because I'm over in Western Canada. Is that legal? Is that kind of relationship legal? Has anyone sat down and said that was actually not right and it shouldn't have gotten past basically the starting line? Or are there certain stipulations in Georgia law that say like if one person is within X amount of years, that's okay?
So basically, so I met him in the drive-through. My friend and I had came through and got pizza, and we were like, "Hey, that guy's cute." And so my mom walked in the store, gave Jason both of our phone numbers. He did text me. I was 14 at the time, and he was 24. I had no clue he was that old. But as far as like legal age of consent, like sexually goes, it is 16 in the state of Georgia. But I don't think there's any law against like a 14-year-old being friends with a 24-year-old, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and you're right about that. It's seen as odd because I mean, what can a 24-year-old get out of being friends with someone who's essentially a junior or a freshman in high school? But it's not explicitly illegal, especially in small town communities, right?
Right.
All right, so to contrast that, people obviously want to know what's going on legally and I guess federally with Jason Jacoby. What can you do to update us? And we'll just jump right into it here. What can you update us with in terms of like the investigation against him, pending charges, lawyers that have been involved? What's going on that front?
So I have contacted the Athens Police Department, and I gave them my statement. I have an officer on my case, obviously, and she took down everything legally that, like everything that happened between us, the disputes, the abuse, everything like that. She took note of all like that kind of stuff, and she passed that on to an investigator. And I've been in contact with an investigator about everything. We've got a lawyer on my side handling my case, and right now it's just a kind of a little bit of a waiting game, and like the legal process is just so long, and it's tedious because we have to get these details, this evidence, this proof. We have to get it perfectly so justice is served in the correct way, and we don't miss anything. And it's just, I need to get everything I have all out on the table. So when the court day does come, nothing is left out. The judge sees everything. It's right there for everybody to see.
So it's basically mirroring. I'm not sure if you followed this case, but it's almost mirroring what's going on with the YouTuber personality Onision, in that everyone sort of knows that he's been up to no good for years and years and years. But when it comes to actually pressing charges and getting all the legal stuff, all the ducks in a row, it has to be done meticulously, and people with their pitchforks out waiting to see justice. The pregame might last months or even years. Is that correct to kind of assume about the situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't go as far to say years. We're doing the see when you're dealing with a domestic violence case, um, these people are dangerous, and so time is of essence. We need to get this done as quickly as we can. So years won't be, but possibly months. But like I said, when you're dealing these domestic violence cases, these abusers could get info of this and retaliate because that's what they do.
So, kind of shifting topics back to the beginning. Uh, I guess I've already asked you guys how you've met, but what was this guy like in the beginning? Because obviously, we can go over for hours and hours and hours about the abuse, but it obviously has to get to that point. So, what were like the first month, 2, 3 months with this guy? What was this like from your point of view?
So when I was 14 and I met him, and he had us all fooled. This guy was God sent. He was the perfect Christian man, never cursed, did not do anything wrong. He he was the perfect image of a man that I would want, a man that I would want in my life. He was so kind. He always smiled. He was so happy. My mother loved him just because of how he carried himself, his persona. He was just, like I said, he was God sent. He was the perfect man. So we thought.
And you know what?
And
I kind of forgive you for almost falling for that fake persona, because especially in 2020 with dating being such a mess and the average guy not really having much in the way of positive attributes about himself, I could kind of see how, especially in the southeastern United States, how someone with almost a 1950s demeanor about themselves could be seen as attractive and could fool so many people.
right. And like he had us all fooled. Everyone who worked at Domino's, my current boyfriend, which will be my forever, I hope. That's what I plan on. Anyway, he worked with us. We all worked in the same store, and he had literally everybody fooled that he was this perfect guy, did no wrong, and there was just, I like to use the saying a lot. You don't know what happens behind closed doors. And I didn't know when I met him. I didn't know what his home life was like. I didn't know what he was like when I wasn't around him. So he was God sent, and we got together. And well, it started out. He took me on a, I guess, quote unquote date to Andretti karting here in Roswell, Georgia, and on the way there, he held his hand out and he asked me to hold his hand. And at this point, I didn't have any intentions of dating him. But he started to show interest in me. So I'm like, you know what? I could really go with this guy. He's nice. He's great. We've been hanging out. We would go to the gym together. And it didn't dawn on me that I'm 17, he's 27. What is a 27-year-old man wanting to do with a young girl 10 years younger than him? That didn't dawn on me at the time. Now that I'm a mother, I understand that point of view. I'm like, okay, that's weird because having a child and maturing and growing up and becoming a mother has made me really, like I said, mature and look at things from a different standpoint. Anyway, so that night he asked me to hold his hand. He started showing interest in me, and then we were going down the road, and he just leaned over and kissed me, and he wanted everything to do with me. And so he said, let's be together. And I'm like, okay. And then the next morning, he was like, we need to break up. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, okay, don't toss me around. If you want to be with me, be with me. If you don't, you don't. Anyway, so we were broken up for God, probably 10 hours. And then he wanted to go to the gym that night. And we ended up being back together. And it was, for the first week, it was an on and off kind of thing. And then he decided, hey, I want to be with you. And the first few months of our relationship was awesome. Like, we had so much fun together. We would go to all these races. He would take me here, he would take me there. Our life was great. And then I really don't know what happened. I don't, it, well, it never just happens. The relationship never just changes.
It was
It's,
like it was like he was almost putting on an act, you could say. Like
yeah,
he was on his
absolutely.
best behavior.
Absolutely. And it's little things. Little things would change here and there. It was a bad, calling me a bad name here and calling me a bad name there. And I'd be like, "Oh, well, he just called me a bad name, at least he didn't hit me or at least he didn't cheat on me." And then it would be him talking to other girls in a romantic way here and him looking at all these girls over here. And I'm like, "Well, he's called me a bad name and he's, you know, not being too loyal. At least he didn't hit me." And it was just, little things added up. And as this time goes on, he had been grooming me, manipulating me. And so I didn't take these as red flags when I should have. He displayed every single textbook red flag of a domestic violence relationship and I didn't take it because he had done so well. He had perfected grooming me, perfected manipulating me, and I didn't realize it. And then it started to, he was pushing me here, pushing me there. Okay, well, at least he didn't fully hit me until he did, and he eventually did.
So it was very much like the boiled frog analogy, in which, I mean, it's kind of a morbid thing to compare it to, but if you put a toad or if you put a frog in a pot of lukewarm water and you slowly crank up the heat on the oven, the frog won't actually know to jump out because its body temperature is becoming slowly accustomed to boiling water. Is that kind of a fair analogy to use, in that you really didn't realize how bad it was until you were essentially boiled alive by domestic violence?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like these people build these beautiful houses around you. This is like kind of an analogy. They build these beautiful houses around you and they plant all these beautiful flowers, and you're too blindsided by how they have groomed you and built you up that you don't realize that that door to that house is locked and you're stuck inside. And by the time you realize that that door is locked and I'm stuck inside, you can't get out. Like, you cannot leave. For some reason, they have manipulated you and made you feel like you cannot live without them. That, hey, door's locked, you can't leave, you're going to die here.
And that is very common, at least from the stuff I've read online about various domestic abuse issues. That is extremely common. Like the fortunate thing for you in this situation is there is an abundance of material and support groups for people in your situation to kind of help yourself get over this mentally. And it's not a situation that's been unique to you, in that you will absolutely be able to recover from this.
Yeah, absolutely. And props to my boyfriend, Adam. Like, if it weren't for him, I would not be who I am or where I am today. He has truly helped me mentally process this all. He has been by my side and he has gotten me whatever I needed. He supported me, and he has just been a real champ when it comes to this, because I'm still living with some. I will probably live with some of the issues that Jason has caused for a very long time. But like, it's so the healthy relationship after an abusive one is always so difficult because Adam is kind of cleaning up his mess. Because there's sometimes where I think that he's gonna do stuff to me that Jason did, and he would never. And I really feel for him because he sits here and he's so supportive and so sweet, and he reminds me that he is not him and he won't hurt me like he did.
So you almost feel like there's a bit of hypervigilance to how you approach your next relationship, in that you're almost kind of on guard 24/7 that it's going to descend into the same kind of madness that the relationship with Jason did, and you have to train yourself that this is a lot different.
Absolutely. And like sometimes, like, it's as far like Jason has mentally messed me up so bad. It's as far as, like, what if Adam leaves the house without me one day and he goes off and cheats on me like Jason did? And I have that built up anxiety and that mental damage that Jason has caused. And now every time Adam leaves the house, I'm like, wow, what if he does what he does? And I have anxiety that he's out there cheating on me. And that's something that I am coping with and having to rewire my brain that that was Jason that did that to me. Like, not every guy is a piece of shit. And I'm just having to rewire my whole brain and outlook on relationships. And even over a year later, I still struggle just because the mental abuse was so severe.
Well, like I said, the one thing that you have to look forward to is if you're only 20 now, by the time you're 22 or 23, you will be in a much better place, and you will probably have moved on almost completely. And this will be essentially a lesson that you can teach some of your friends if they're in that same situation. And it's absolutely awful that you have had to go through this, but at the same time, when we look at where you are 5 or 10 years down the road, this can essentially be a tool to help others. Which, I hate, saying every cloud has a silver lining. It's cliche, it's dumb, but in this situation, your story might actually be able to help people.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I was super excited to this interview thing, because I want to get that out there. Like, I want to get my story out there, and other young girls who may be in the situation I am. I'm not saying this, well, this video might go that far.
Yeah.
But I want other people to hear this, and I want them to hear my experience, and I want them to maybe this video help them open up to see red flags. Like I really want to get my story out there.
So the next topic I kind of want to cover in this piece, unfortunately, relates to us sim racers, because a lot of us didn't see this guy in his personal life. We only saw him through basically his iRacing streams. And obviously, there are a few of us who kind of had talked to him over the years and realized he was really big into racing sims, even more so than people like myself who actually work in the industry. When did you realize, as a girlfriend, that his obsession with video games, the fake fire suits, the the sim rig that he built that costs thousands of dollars, even more so than a real car, his almost quest to become a real life NASCAR driver. When did you realize, and when did this become a major problem in your relationship? When did this start affecting his livelihood?
So, wow, where do I freaking start on that one? God. So, when we had first got together, I was like, man, this is so cool. This is so cool. He's got all this cool stuff. And then I slowly seen like his obsession come out. Like he would stream for like 18 hours sometimes at a time. He would be late to work because he was doing sim racing stuff. But where it really, really, really hit me is when I was pregnant. I was around 7 weeks. No, maybe I was around 12. I was probably around 12 weeks. I was early on, still first trimester, and I have infertility issues, and so it was a blessing that I was even pregnant at it as is. And there was a test. I was really, really, really high risk. I'm high risk for early miscarriage, and I'm high risk for stillborn. So traveling in a car is not was not like the option for me. Like I couldn't sit in a car for 4 hours. I had to keep blood flow going, to keep blood running to the baby. So what really struck it for me is there was a test coming. I had a blood test at the doctor's office, and that was going to tell me if there's anything wrong with Carson and if I was going to be able to carry him to full term. And he wanted to go to Talladega. And he had mentioned to me if he ever went to a NASCAR race by himself, especially Talladega, that he would probably cheat on me. And so when he wanted to go, I told him that I am not physically able to go. My child's life inside of me is more important than sitting in a car for 4.5 hours driving to a racetrack and having to walk miles around the racetrack. And he said, well, I'm going with or without you. I don't care what happens to you or the baby. I need to go to the NASCAR races and get noticed by sim racers. I need to get noticed. I need to get a ride. I need someone to sponsor me. He's like, I don't care what your blood test comes back. I'm going with or without you. And when you're pregnant, you are emotional. And I cried and cried and cried. And I begged him, I'm like, please stay with me. I'm scared. And and part of the reason was because he had straight up told me if he went without me that he was going to cheat on me. And so me being pregnant and hormonal, I didn't know what to do. I was upset. I was scared. And so something ended up happening and he didn't go. But the fact that he told me that he would cheat on me while I was pregnant if he went to a race alone, and that he would rather go to a NASCAR race than stay here with me and support me through this emotional time while I find out if my baby is healthy enough to make it or not. The fact that he would choose going to a track over the health and well-being of his girlfriend and child, that was my number one sign. Hey, there's something wrong. There's something wrong here. Why is he so obsessed with this? Why does the health of his child not matter more than going to a race car track?
So you touch on a very bizarre topic in there, in that you believe, or that he believes, that if he went to basically just a random NASCAR race, there's almost 40 of them a year, and just mingled in the pits, that he would somehow get recruited to drive a NASCAR stock car. And obviously, you just being around the scene, you've heard the stories that allegedly Some drivers were recruited through iRacing or other racing simulators to drive stock cars. I think you figured out now that those are all just marketing BS statements. That there's obviously a lot of steps in between playing a computer game and making it to NASCAR. Do you
Right.
remember? Did he ever sit down and try and explain this to you and explain his thought process behind that? Because even someone like myself, who went from just being a guy with a blog to racing late models, there were several steps in between that that I took to get to that point. It wasn't just I was pulled out of my computer chair and put in a race car. It was a period of several years where I saved up money and worked at it. Did he ever sit down and explain to you how he thought that streaming for what, let's be realistic, a very small audience would somehow get him recruited into NASCAR?
Um, his big thing was he's the nicest guy in the world. This is his words, not mine. He said, "I'm the nicest guy in the world. I'm so handsome. I can drive a race car better than anyone out there. I drive a race," and he's talking about virtually in iRacing. He was like, "I virtually drive this race car better than most NASCAR drivers out there. This is 100% realistic. If I can drive behind the wheel of a simulator, then I can do it in real life. And someone's going to notice that. Someone's going to notice how great I am. Someone's going to notice that I am the nicest guy in the world. And I'm going to be the nicest NASCAR driver that ever lived." That was his big thing. "I'm the nicest guy in the world. I'm the best iRacer ever. There's no one better than me."
And no one did anyone ever try and talk some sense into him? Because from someone who followed him from, I guess, an iRacing slash esports standpoint, he never competed in any major championships. He never won any sort of money from doing this. He competed in what the equivalent of just private leagues. He was essentially playing community softball, thinking he would make the MLB in terms of esports terms. Did anyone try and talk some sense into him and say, "Listen, Jason, like this is not how this works," or did he just push it all out?
Absolutely not. No one even acknowledged it. They were like, "Yeah, this guy's so awesome. This guy's so nice. He's going to make it. I want to see you out on that track, Jason. I want to see you as a NASCAR driver. I want to watch you on TV." No one even acknowledged it. And even if anyone tried to question it, like you had mentioned in the previous video, blocked from the channel immediately.
So it's
And
almost
so
like he was surrounded by just enablers and people who would just gas the guy up, and no one really tried to come out and say that what you're saying is not doable. And I understand that there are a group of iRacers and just sim racers in general who have this thought process, and it seems like he started to surround himself with the kind of yes men that encourage this stuff instead of people who kept him grounded and said, "Listen, like there are like 8 different steps that you can take to get to that point. You're not going to get pulled from your computer chair and put in a race car."
absolutely. And it, let's see, 95% of his stream viewers and 95% of the subscribers on his channel were under 14 years old. And um, he used to, he, I'm trying to think of like the words to say here. But anyway, so 95% of the people were 14 years old. They didn't understand that to go racing, you need to have deep pockets, you need to have connections, you need to have a way in besides racing. So all these minors, these children, would those were his major hype me ups, and he would feed off of these kids. And something that he freaking tries to tell people now is that he's told people that I hate his fans and I think they are retarded. And that's so bizarre to me that he would even say that and even make that kind of statement. Because for one, I never said that his stream viewers were retarded by any means. I just want to get that out there and clear that out because I've seen that going around Facebook quite a lot recently, and that's not the case. But yeah, he just took all this advice from 14 and under children, and they would hype him up, and then I don't really know where he went wrong in thinking that a 14-year-old kid with no racing experience, no nothing, had any insight on the real world and how it really works getting in NASCAR. I didn't know much about NASCAR, but I I wasn't stupid. I knew that by sitting behind a desk, you couldn't just get in. Like, you got to have deep pockets, you got to have connection, you got to have skill, you got to have some kind of races under your belt. Like, no one just goes straight. And especially to be 28 years old doing this, that's a little late to get started into this. Like, you see a lot of these people coming up from, they move up through these stages in racing and they start when they're like freaking old enough to walk. And I kept telling him, at 28, you're a little old to be considered, on top of the fact you have no races under the belt. You do not have deep pockets to do this. I mean, hell, all your money went into a piece of metal sitting in your bedroom.
So one of the next questions I kind of want to lead into is that, at least constantly on his streams, I'm not sure how much you paid attention to this, but he seemed to try and surround himself and name drop up and coming NASCAR drivers. I know he's mentioned and raced with Alex LeBay on iRacing, which is a NASCAR Canadian Series champion. He name dropped Chase Briscoe a lot. He seemed to surround himself with these people who are connected to the actual NASCAR scene. Kirk May Racing, the late model team that built his sim cockpits, another. He would always be going to these driving schools. And even now, with some of the more deranged stuff that's appearing on his YouTube channel, he seems to imply that he was connected with some people, or connected with these people in some way. What was ever going on there? Were they just kind of politely patting him on the head as they would, a special needs fan? Or were these actual genuine friendships that we should now be concerned about because these people might have also played a role?
So I'll start with Chase Briscoe. So as far as the Chase Briscoe thing goes, he would constantly message him on, I do believe it was Twitter, and he even went as far to ask Chase Briscoe to borrow one of his fire suits, in which, for some ungodly reason, Chase let him borrow a fire suit, but there was no genuine friendship there. They didn't talk on the daily basis. They didn't. I mean, it was. I do believe that he had made Chase believe that he was such a great, genuine guy, and Chase was like, "Wow, yeah, let's. I'll let him, borrow my fire suits. This is a great guy. He's so nice." And so now I'll start with the Alex LeBay. Um, so there's a guy named Martin Daviau, or whatever his name was. He's in Canada, and somehow him and Jason had met, and he raced in some league or he hosted some league that Alex LeBay raced in. And so Martin and Jason kind of connected, and Jason wanted connections with Alex LeBay, and they never talked. It was nothing more. And I even think that Alex maybe made some rude comments to Jason here and there, but it was nothing more than them just being in the same race server. There was no friendship, there was no connection, there was no talking. The only person he talked to that was even affiliated with Alex LeBay was that guy named Martin Daviau. I mean,
Okay.
there was no relationships here with any of them. He just praises these people, and he, in hopes to get them to notice him, he mentions their name time after time for time for time.
So, in terms of the Seat Time Racing School and Kirk May Racing's late model team, this is more or less the same thing as well. He just constantly mentioned these companies and these racing schools and these teams for the same reason. They didn't really have any connection with them.
Okay, so Kirk May, yes, he had a connection with him. I'll start with Seat Time Racing School because that one's a little bit short of a story. So for Christmas, his parents bought him like some $1,000 racing experience, and he offered Seat Time, like this, advertise them on his YouTube channel and get them more views. And sorry, my Carson's a little upset. Anyway, he offered to get them more views and post them on his channel. If they gave him free races. So he would sometimes go to Charlotte and get free races with Seat Time just for, like, advertising them. So there was nothing more than that. Seat Time's kind of, I mean, it's not too big. There was never more than, I would say, like 40 people at a time at their events. But Kirk May, Kirk is kind of a touchy subject because there's some very bad blood between him and I. So Jason fed in, okay, Kirk May is located in Athens, or was.
Okay.
His shop sold out. He sold a shop to somebody. Anyway, so Jason, this is kind of funny. I'm glad you brought up Kirk. Kirk had Jason working over 40 hours in his shop, scrubbing the floors and sweeping, doing bitch work, and didn't pay him a dime. Kirk told him that if he worked in his shop and did all of his work for him in the shop, like such as like painting and cleaning, you know, bitch work,
Yep.
that he would give him a free $10,000 ride or something like that. And you see where that went. He didn't give him anything.
Okay.
That man ran Jason for his labor, and that was it. Jason got nothing out of it. He charged Jason out the ass for that sim rig. It was not worth what he paid for it. And
Are we
that's
allowed
really
to
all.
ask what he paid for it?
It's public. It's public news. So I mean, he paid probably it was over 30 grand.
What?
He said it on streams before. Yeah, maxed out credit cards. He said it on streams before. That's why I have no problem telling you the price of that, because he said it before. People know it. He put it out there publicly, so I will put it out there as well. It was over 30 grand. He maxed out credit cards.
So he realizes, and I hate to interject here, but like for example, my car to buy it secondhand from the first owner was 16 grand all inclusive. So that's 4 tires, car runs. You can show up to the track ready to race. 16 grand Canadian, so conversion wise, that's 11 or 12 US. Does Jason realize? And I mean, we're just splitting hairs here, but does he realize that he could have gone actual racing for a third of the cost that he spent on that sim rig? Or did that just never cross his mind?
Yeah, he realizes it. He's just too. He wants to have all this cool stuff that no one else has, and all this just junk. And he knows he could have went racing. His parents, when he was younger, they told him if he did chores that they would buy him some kind of car to race, and he just would not do his chores. And it's just the story's so stupid.
Yes, I agree with you there. Wow. Man, I can't get over that figure. So there's a story that came out after his kid was born that he went and bought an ARCA show car. So after he's already bought the sim rig, he's going out and buying a completely, show ready stock car on top of this. What was the deal there?
Okay, so the show car came before I was in the picture, actually.
Okay.
But it was after our son was born that he got his dad to give him $2,000 to go to Florida and buy this another just piece of metal to go in his room. So now he not only has one sim rig that he's going bankrupt for, but he has 2 now that his parents gave him money. But there was times after our son was born, and I got paid biweekly. And babies at that age are very, very expensive. They go through 12, 13 diapers a day. Formula, he went through that like crazy. And I'm not on government assistance or anything like
Okay.
that. So anyway, he would spend all this money on, specifically one time we needed diapers very bad. And he took our money without me knowing and bought a racing window net for his sim rig. And that was like $40 right there. And a box of diapers is roughly around $40. And so I'm like, you literally spent, and this was like 3 days before payday. I'm like, you literally spent the last bit of money we had in our bank account. How do you expect me to get diapers for our son? What do you expect him to do? And he had like maybe 3 diapers left at this point. And it's like he put everything above taking care of his child, basically. So at that point, I had to ask my mother for money, and that was when I have a kid, I expect to be able to support that child, and it's kind of a slap in the face to have to ask for money when you have your own child. Like, this is my child, I'm supposed to be taking care of him. But yeah, so I had to borrow money from my parents to buy diapers until payday because of his poor choices.
And it's safe to say that eventually your parents learned what was really going on behind the scenes, and they of course forgive you for all this, correct?
Absolutely. So what? God, they didn't know for a long time because he would tell me that I better not ruin his reputation. I better not ruin his online image. He would kill me, essentially, if I ever did anything to compromise the perfect nice guy picture he had. It was when we finally broke things up and he hospitalized me with a brain injury that switch in my head flipped. like, oh shit, I've got to get out of this or else I'm going to end up dead. He threw me into a metal head, like the metal headrest on a racing seat and knocked me out, gave me a concussion. I ended up in the hospital because I couldn't see. My head was severely hurting, and it almost killed me. And he did this all in front of our son. And at that point, I'm like, oh shit, I have to get out of here. He's going to kill me. So, all that being scared to leave him and just not being able to leave him, that all, thank God. And I almost thank God that he did that to me, because had he not done that, that switch would have not flipped in my head to tell me that I need to go. And so when that happened, I started coming clean to my family about what had happened. And they were heartbroken because I had lied for him for years because of fear. And so I finally was able to come out to my family, hey, this is what happened. And little did I know, so I had lied to my parents when I went to the hospital. I had told them that I tripped and fell because he told me to tell them that. He's like, you better tell them that or else I'm going to kill you. You better tell the doctor that or else I'm going to kill you. But little did I know, I don't know what possessed him to do this, but thank God it did. While I was getting waiting on the doctor to come in, he had went to the bathroom and he was staying in there for a very long time. While he was in that bathroom, he was texting my mom, owning up to everything that he did. He texted her, hey, Ken's in the hospital. My mom said, is she okay? What happened? And he owned up and admitted to everything that he had done. Had he not done that, I don't know what I would do now. I don't know what I would do for proof that he done that to me. But thank God something was not right in his head that he went and told himself, because he had put the fear of God in me that I better not tell the doctor what happened.
And this is all occurring while he's streaming on iRacing almost nightly, presenting this almost Ned Flanders type persona to everybody.
Absolutely. He would turn that stream on and be the perfect nice guy, and he would cut it off, cuss me out, put his hands on me, and he was completely different. You would never know. It was night and day. You would never know it was the same person.
So, two questions left. We're closer to the end than the beginning. How did he cover this up and have so many people fooled? And how did so many people remain relatively tight lipped? Because I know you had mentioned to me that he had tried to scam Joseph Lombard. There are people just throughout the sim racing community who have had run ins with this guy and who have seen this behavior in action, even as it doesn't relate to your guys' relationship. And it seemed like everyone was intent on remaining quiet. Like I don't want to call out Joseph Lombard here. He is not at fault at all. But at any given time over the past 4 years, someone could have made a YouTube video about this. A prominent person in the sim racing community could have come out and said, look, we need to talk about a serious situation. And nobody ever did. And it seemed like everyone knew bits and pieces of this stuff that was occurring. How did Jacoby convince them all to stay quiet?
How he did it was they were all online. They were all on the computer. They were all behind a computer screen. So no one knew exactly what happened behind closed doors. And just to think about that sometimes gives me chills, because no one online truly knows what he did and how he was outside of the sim racing community, like outside of like sim racing online. So no one really, people got bits and pieces of this, but no one really, I guess, thought about it like that, because they did not know, like I said, what happened behind closed doors. And now that I lived in the same household, know his whole family, lived with him, had a child with him, I've been behind those closed doors. And I'm a survivor of the domestic violence. I'm a survivor of being mentally and physically abused. And so now, thank God that I am a survivor, I can tell people my story, and I'm not going to sit in the dark about it anymore. I've sat in the dark too long. Other people haven't. I mean, like you said, they've gotten bits and pieces of it, but no one really put the puzzle together because of his persona, his demeanor. Like, no one under. I
So
guess
it's
people.
it's almost
I
like
don't,
he intentionally kept people at arm's length so he could
yep.
continue to present the persona and not let people get too close to see what he was actually like.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, he did not let anybody in enough to really understand what was going on. Just enough to have suspicions, but no one acted on those suspicions because it didn't go any further than that. But I am. it's a curse and a blessing that I was with him. Blessing for my son, blessing that I'm here to tell the story. But it was a curse because just those endless nights crying, hurting, and all this, I'm here to tell that story. And so now I want to tell this so no one else gets hurt.
So the last question I have for you, and it's the question that has kind of been looming over this entire situation, and it's something that pretty much everyone is speculating at this point. Is there any kind of mental illness at play, and has he at least tried to get help in the past? Because obviously, I watch his YouTube channel, both the videos he's uploading over the past 48 hours that do not make any sense, as well as his videos from 4 or 5 years ago when he was just a random sim racer who was a bit obsessive with the hobby. And first of all, as someone who does volunteer work for various mental health related causes, my kind of educated estimation at what I'm looking at is schizophrenia and some sort of underlying cluster B personality disorder. Is there anything you can tell us on this front to confirm that this is more than just this person is shitty and that there's underlying mental illnesses at play? And if so, has he at least tried to get help for them?
You're dead on with your assumed diagnosis. You're dead on with that. Um, anybody can look at what he's doing and how he's acting and put those signs into Google, and you're going to get clarity. There is definitely something very mentally wrong. One day, his mom and I had a talk, and I told his mom, like, sometimes I think there's truly nothing wrong with him. Sometimes I think he's just a terrible, shitty person. And she agreed with me. She's like, I know. But put that aside, there is something very, very mentally there. He has gotten help on multiple occasions, medication, hospital stays. But I'm going to quote what his dad said when he was in the hospital after his wreck one time. You cannot help someone that does not want to be helped. You cannot help someone that doesn't see a problem in their actions. And that is where he is at.
So it's definitely safe to say that he's at least been hospitalized in some sort of psychiatric assessment program, 1, 2, 3 times. And it's at the point where now, as a 30-year-old man, he just doesn't care to continue with treatment. Is that safe to say?
Yes, he sees no wrong in his actions. And until he sees that I'm hurting people, there's something wrong, this will continue to happen. And his parents are a big part of it. I hate to say this, but I can't put all the blame on him because a lot of it has to do with the way he was raised. And his parents are enablers, and they enable him to act like this, and they enable him to do the things that he does. And they're not consistent with treatment for him. Like I said, he's been offered help many, many times, and he sees nothing wrong with him. He's not accepting help. His parents, like I said, enable him. They allow him to do the things he does. He doesn't have to deal with the repercussions of his actions. And why, I guess he thinks, why should I change when everyone worships me? Why should I change when everyone bows and allows me to do the things that I do? I can get away with anything because I can blame it on a mental illness. And sometimes that's when I think that there is nothing mentally wrong, because there's one time he looked at me as he let Carson fall off the bed. I told him, watch Carson, I have to go to the bathroom. Do not let him fall off the bed. He was like 3 months old. And I hear a big thud and some screaming. And I come in there and I'm like, how could you do this? How could you let him fall off the bed? And this man looked me dead in the eyes. And he said, I'm autistic, remember? I'm not a good dad, remember? I'm a really bad dad, remember? I'm autistic. I'm not supposed to be a dad. And that was the craziest shit that man has ever said to me. He looked me dead in the eyes and was so serious. So I do believe there's got to be something seriously mentally wrong, because you do not let your son fall off the bed and then look your girlfriend dead in the eyes and say, I'm autistic, remember? I'm a bad dad. Like, that is crazy. And there's just, I don't think he's ever going to get the help that he needs.
Well, and unfortunately, from a mental illness standpoint, the combination of schizophrenia and cluster B is extremely difficult to treat fully, because even if you take medication to dial out the schizophrenia and get him to a point where his personality is at least stable and he can say things that make sense, as he would when he was streaming on iRacing. Dialing out the cluster B traits is infinitely harder, and it's not uncommon for these people to stick with therapy. So, unfortunately, but also fortunately, the only way to deal with a person like Jason is in videos like this and to caution other people about them so he can kind of limit the damage that he can do to other people because people are just generally afraid to mingle with him. And that's on top of what will most likely be some sort of prosecution that comes in the coming months against him.
Absolutely. I want people, and there are people who still say that I'm a liar. He doesn't do these things. He's too good of a guy. He's been great to my kids. And I really want people to take a step back and really assess and listen to what I'm saying, what you are saying, and really listen to what Jason's saying on top of that. I mean, it's not right. And I pray that these parents don't let their children associate with this monster anymore, because like I said, most of his stream viewers are 14 and under, and he is guiding them. They are using him as an influence, and he is guiding them in the wrong way. And I really hope that they people open their eyes up and see, we don't need to associate with him. My child will not associate with him.
Well, after the videos that he's been posting over the past 48 hours, I think it's very easy to see which person is telling the truth and which person is lying. Because on one hand, we have a fairly well-spoken girl for your age, I have to admit, telling these very detailed stories of domestic abuse and manipulation and the gaslighting that occurs in a relationship like this. And on
Hmm.
the other hand, you have a guy saying that God was talking to him through the TV and through NASCAR races. So it's pretty obvious to the opinions of people who matter what is going on here. And the few people who do choose to still align themselves with Jason, uh, in all honesty, have to be so retarded that their opinion doesn't even matter, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you can still allow your child, or you are still going to associate with someone who is displaying every single sign of mental disability and psycho and schizophrenic, if you still allow yourself and your children to associate with that, then something needs to be assessed with you. There is something wrong with you as well, because no sane person with sense will ignore these signs.
Well, thank you for taking the hour and a half out of your day to sit down with me. This has been a wild ride, and on behalf of the entire sim community, not just in iRacing, but everyone who plays these games and has seen this story develop over the past 3, 4, even 5 years, or even knew of Jacoby long before any of this stuff happened. Thank you for sitting down and telling your story and giving a voice for all the people who are feeling trapped in domestic situations that are hurting them physically, hurting them emotionally, because you're extremely strong to put your face out here and tell your story and tell the intimate details of things that happen to you that are absolutely not okay by any stretch of the imagination, as hopefully it'll encourage other people to come forward or simply openly talk about this kind of stuff with their friends. Maybe they themselves are in a shitty relationship. I do want to apologize on behalf of the sim community for botching the handling of the situation, as you are pretty well aware of. People have tried to come forward about Jason over the past 2, 3, 4 years, talk about it on various forums, and they have been met with bans, the posts being deleted, just completely ridiculous actions to try and cover up for Jacoby's behavior. And I want to say to you personally, this was not okay, and in the future, we need to do a lot better when we handle these situations, because there is a chance that some of this could have been stopped before it happened. So I feel really disappointed that we kind of failed you in that regard, but we are going to try and learn from this, and we appreciate how strong you are to come forward and talk about this stuff.
Yeah, I can't thank you all enough for even just taking the time to listen and letting me have the opportunity to speak out on this, and giving me the opportunity to share my story in hopes to help other people. And I appreciate it like no other.
Well, with that, I think we'll end the interview. Thank you, everyone who took the time out of their day to listen. And yes, take care, stay safe, and good luck on the track, and good luck to McKenzie Racing Carson.